Hello, I'm Paddy Delaney, and welcome to Integrated Infrastructure, a podcast dedicated to bringing you news and views from industry leaders involved in the development, design, construction and management of the many built forms that make up Australia's integrated infrastructure. This is episode 7 of Integrated Infrastructure, and this week we're joined by Emily Mudge and Jack Shelly from North Projects. We talk about the challenges of the 22-hour lockdown in Victoria, how COVID is influencing their pipeline of work, and how typically less sexy markets may now benefit from deal-seeking investors and better value in land and construction prices. We talk about how last week's conversation with an institutional client about project delivery has quickly flipped into assessing their asset base. We touch on the benefits of social procurement going forward, and as always, we look forward to hearing what Jack and Emily are excited about in the near future. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you do. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Jack and Emily. Jack, Emily, welcome to Integrated Infrastructure. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. As you know, this is a short form podcast, so we'll get into it and start having a chat. But just to begin with, it'd be great if you guys could introduce yourselves and give us an idea about who you are, who you work for, and yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, okay. So I'll start off. My name's Jack Shelly. I'm the director in charge for Victoria for North Projects. My background is in quantity surveying, originally from the UK, moved across to Australia about, actually last week celebrated my 5-year anniversary in Australia.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Are you a citizen already?
No, not yet. Permanent resident. The citizenship application's been in for about 9 months.
That sounds too long.
Well, we'll see. But with the pandemic, who knows how long those sorts of things are going to happen.
You did get a step closer with a marriage proposal and a wedding. So
congratulations.
Further along the track.
That's it. It's been an interesting year thus far.
So you were proposed to, or the other way around?
Sorry?
You were proposed to, or you proposed?
No, I proposed. We got married at the start of the year.
Fantastic.
Pre-COVID lockdown, and so it's been an interesting year for myself so far.
I bet.
Em, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. I actually joined when Jack was on his honeymoon. We had a little bit of a handover last year. My background commenced with consulting, an engineering firm in Sydney, actually. They're now Oricon, which was Conor Wagner of the day. And after 5 years there, thought I'd love to give the construction side a go. 15 years on, loved every aspect of that, the challenges, major health infrastructure projects, along with a few others in the justice and education space. And then thought I'd come back down to Melbourne, and with that was looking around at where next to lay the hat, and North really stood out. So couldn't be happier. It's been 6 months now and loving it.
Wow, and what a 6 months to be introduced to a new company. And
that's right. And look, Jack and I work really closely together here in Victoria. My role's as Director of Project Management and Advisory. So. Fantastic. And look, we've got people listening and watching all over the country at the moment. So not everybody's having different experiences of different lockdowns or no lockdowns at all. Your week 2 of what's hopefully a 6-week, or hopefully could be even less or could be more, lockdown. What's it like in Melbourne at the moment? What are the things that you're noticing and missing, or what's going on?
So lockdown for us as a company, sort of when the stage 3 lockdown came into effect back in March, we sort of sent everybody off to work from home, as was the most sensible thing to do. And that really hasn't changed since then. So there was a slight relaxing of those rules, and some people went back into the office for a period of time, myself and Emily included. But as the sort of stage 3 and cases seem to get more serious, we sort of transitioned away from that, and our office has sort of been, only in case of an emergency sort of solution for about the past 5 or 6 weeks. So yes, we're in week 2 of lockdown, stage 4, but for us, it's really business as usual. And that's not to say that there aren't challenges with the stage 4 lockdown. There's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to what our clients are going to do and what are our affected projects. North Projects does a lot of work with government clients, so there are, obviously projects which are going to continue to work on site, but it's really on a case-by-case basis. So we're currently working through that with our clients, and we, sort of probably won't come into a landing on that for the next few weeks. So that's very different to, we're a national business. So within Sydney, we've got our team back in the office. They've been back in the office for about the past 8 weeks. And the same goes for South Australia. So it's very much business as usual there. They're back to seeing clients face-to-face for meetings and sort of following all the rules and regulations. And then on a personal level, stage 4 is sort of, it's got its challenges. 22 hours you're supposed to be at home. For it, it's, essentially you're allowed out of your house for an hour for exercise and an hour to go to the shops to get your essentials. But for me, I don't know whether you can tell, but exercise isn't top of the agenda. So it's certainly 23 hours of lockdown for me. That's really me. And what do you think?
Yeah, I think the business is really well positioned because we are providing a diverse set of consulting services to the industry. Some are live projects, like Jack mentioned, with public or private clients that are in the thick of delivery programs. There's a number that are that front-end consulting where they're proceeding without real delay, and certainly maybe rethinking of some of the risks and the planning around it or the programming. But there's also that end of project sort of aspect that we have as well, from a month-to-month review of active projects, the DLP stage projects, and also the lessons learned reflection of some of those projects that we're just spending more time on. So as a business, we service the whole life cycle, and that's enabled us to continue working very well and reasonably unaffected. Certainly there's challenges.
Yeah, are you finding that there is work all the way through that life cycle? Because in talking to other people, we know that all the governments, whether the state or federal, they're talking about shovel-ready projects, and all their energy is going into shovel-ready projects, which means that they're talking about let's get stuff moving now, but aren't necessarily focusing on those longer-term projects or even the medium-term projects, which. Some people have suggested to me that means that there could well be a lag for engineers, architects, people working at the design and the front end of projects, that we're going to have even potentially a dip in work. Is that something that you're concerned about?
Not really. The needs are there, and the shift that we're seeing, certainly whilst they're fast-tracking some of the shovel-ready projects, that makes sense. Some of the other projects that are more medium-term might still be subject to funding. Or a partnership type contribution of funding. And it does make sense with so much change that's been going on with, what is really only a draft indication of budget. We don't have a full insight into what the government's commitment is there, as well as an ongoing need for support of the immediate crisis and those resources. So it does make sense that, some of the longer term projects are paused, and we're seeing some of that. Some are continuing at a slower rate, some are paused or rescheduled, but the needs don't go away, and particularly in those industries or sectors where there's been a little bit of a supply deficiency. The demand is actually even stronger, and I think it'll push the acceleration of some of those industries. So aged care is one. It's always competed against the cost of residential property or sort of the value of land. There's also the social and affordable housing, again, another need and something that will continue to be a need through this. So I think the appetite and the market's appreciation of the resilience of some of these industries that were possibly underappreciated or underinvested in previously will show in those projects, sort of upscaling and even really the mixed use nature of how those projects might get tacked on to a commercial one as well.
Yeah, you mentioned investment there, and there certainly seems to be plenty of money around at the moment. People suggesting that they want to invest. I mean, IFM came out a couple of weeks ago, and they said they've got $160 billion ready to invest. They're obviously, looking for unsolicited projects that they can try and generate themselves, but they're also looking for people to come to them with projects. I wonder if some of those traditionally less sexy markets might get some attention now. I don't know. What do you think?
Look, that's absolutely what we're seeing, and the construction industry is typically not been a sexy industry. You have the doctors and nurses and the police and fiery sort of dramas and shows, and there's a lot around that, and you don't have many hard hats sort of rolling around, and with the plans and the pointing, and it's not.
How do you make RBT into a?
That's right. So, look, it's not all about that. It's economic sense. It's and most of our business is founded on that cost planning, and Jack will speak more to that, but just the opportunity of looking outside the box and filling a void in the market or an opportunity in the market that wasn't really, delivered on in those traditional roles. So I think most certainly those partnerships are definitely something that I'll let Jack talk to ones we've established at North and really long term. And major infrastructure projects, but certainly we're seeing a lot more of those private to private partnerships as well, where you might have an operator and a landholder. So it's not just the public to private, it's the smaller partnerships, not just a full PPP in the infrastructure. So there is a lot more interest in the partnership, and we're all for a partnership approach.
Yeah, fantastic. But before we get on to that, what do you say? What are you seeing in not just the day-to-day working, where we can't, the 23 hours at home, or the fact that we're all sitting on Zoom and all the rest of it. But what are the biggest challenges to the industry that you see right now? Let's say even after the 6-week lockdown, what's COVID changed, and what are the challenges that this proposes? In whether it's economic or being the ability to deliver, and what do you think those are?
Well, for me, the sort of key big challenges right now that are sort of at the forefront of my mind from talking to clients, one of which is the changing landscape of the CBD. And when I say that, what I mean is the need for these large towers that people are housed in. Is that going to be the way that we operate in the future? What's the density going to be like? Are we going to be able to make, the office floor plates of traditional office floor plates pay that they used to have? And are we suddenly going to start moving to suburban hubs? There's a lot of literature out there in the market that sort of talks to people moving to these smaller hubs that are potentially, they don't want to commute more than 5 kilometres of a day, and they stay within that community, which, for a city like Melbourne, for example, where your average commute for people is an hour, that really is going to have a massive impact on that CBD. So you've got a lot of towers which are being built at the minute, or are nearing completion, or are in operation, that need for that space is going to change potentially. Now, that's just one challenge that our clients are facing. The wider economic challenge that you sort of touched upon, the availability of money in the market, the fact that we aren't potentially, or potentially are going to go into a recession, a severe recession off the back of the pandemic. These are all unknowns, but there are positive signs in the market, with the fact that there are investors out there who are saying that they want to invest money. There is, the Aussie dollar is in a fairly stable and in a powerful position. The share markets, for example, are showing a pretty positive position. So whilst it's very easy to focus on that bleak potential of the economic position where we may end up, there are some positive signs out there. Other sort of unknowns that are, and big risks for me is, as you said earlier, there's the shovel-ready projects that are coming down the track. The beauty of North is we do work across the different cities, and we are a national business. And traditionally, each of the major cities is at a different point in that investment cycle, which means that we can sort of pass those resources around to the point where you are using them in the most efficient manner. Now, if there's a break in that cycle, that presents a problem to not only us as a business from what distribution of resource, but it presents a problem because suddenly you've got a depressed market, which presents a problem itself. The other one for me was I've spoken to a few university clients, and not only the COVID impacts, but also the changing landscape of students that are going to be coming to the shores. That's meaning that universities are having to look at their current asset bank, whether it be their land bank or their actual tangible assets, and how they can use those in the most effective way to sort of cover the potential deficit that is going to come in their forecast funding models as a result of diminished students. If COVID is prolonged, obviously students, high proportion of international students cannot come to study, so that creates a big problem for them.
Because I imagine you were probably talking to those universities about actually building projects for them not that long ago, were you?
Exactly.
And now you're having to have a different conversation with them.
We're still in a live environment where we are building new facilities for them, which they're not sure how they're going to service moving forward.
Yeah, right.
It's probably the opportunity that it's presented us. There's so many unknowns on that large scale that enable us to plan with confidence. You don't have to think hard to, consider some of the smaller businesses and other industries that have, similar challenge, open one week and close the next. So that ability to plan is really impacting everyone. Having said that, challenges and managing risk is what we do as an industry and as business too. So those projects that Jack mentioned, particularly the university planning projects, where we're able to refocus and really look at, what's the second case scenario, what's the third case scenario, and where are the opportunities. And a lot of the opportunities are just in smart business and smart modelling anyway. So they're things that the client, we're already investigating with the client, and it might just mean that some of those are a higher priority for them in the short term.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think there are a lot of people and businesses that have been have not dealt with the sort of ambiguity of the situation very well, and those that are probably those that are looking at all the possibilities, looking at all the opportunities, pivoting their businesses, their assets, their plans, and it sounds like you're able to help with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as an industry, essentially, risk and opportunity are the two key aspects for us. And we focus a lot on the risk, but, and we're thinking a lot about that. But, the opportunities, if we look at the types of projects we've done before, New Royal Adelaide Hospital, it had its challenges. We were brought in as a specialist consultant to work on the cure plan, which was essentially, assisting the project to reach completion with minimal disruption and impact, given the circumstances it was under, and that's an ongoing project. But like other major health facilities and major universities, major infrastructure projects, it's about operational efficiency. It's about functional planning. It's about whole of life costing. It's about, utilisation and redundancy and all of those measures. So where, those elements that are smart business, smart modelling and design, the reason why we have a job essentially are all the areas that we're just continuing to focus on and proving. I think the market appetite for that whole of life cycle costing, that acknowledgement that wellbeing is something that is valuable and can contribute to improved efficiency and operation of facilities is fantastic.
And that's something that you've done a lot of work with your healthcare background, I presume, Emily, in terms of that.
Yeah. I think Royal Children's Hospital was one that really stood out to me as a benchmark. And, of course, Royal Women's was before that. But there was a considered investment in aspects that didn't otherwise sort of reach the brief. So a patient having view and access to natural light and, natural environment, there was some study, that actually underpinned a value to that. They would improve on average 2 days faster. That's a huge, huge opportunity of cost and well-being to not just the patients but to Victorian society as a whole. So, finally there was some measurements of these aspects, which is really sustainability at the end of the day, smart building design, smart and efficient materials and utilisation of space and cross-functional and future planning, minimising waste. They're all sustainable principles. But we had some economic value that we could finally put to it. It wasn't just the wishy-washy buzzwords that were being thrown around anymore. So, projects like that were real landmarks that started to turn the public and private investment and appreciation of, rather than just the build it for the cheapest and sell it on, it was more of an asset management, value, whole of life cycle value proposition. So something we're heavily involved in many of our projects.
And Jack, you mentioned earlier about the changing role of an office, and I mean, Emily, there must be an opportunity somewhere to take that learning from the healthcare environment and then actually think about the office workers' experience or the or any workers' experience, because not only does it, it's if you take the patient out and put a worker in there, somebody who now has to work in various different locations, one of those which is their own home environment. How do you get those dollar efficiencies and sort of, or dare I say even happy worker, in that process as well? It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? The changes that we're going to have to think about going forward.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask one of you to talk. Who's going?
Which one?
Go for it, Jack.
It really does present opportunities, and that's sort of the way that we've been talking about this with various people around town. It's kind of been treated in that way because you've suddenly got this asset bank that can be used in a different way, and it just needs to be fleshed out. And as you say, the user experience, the happy worker side of things is really key to employers nowadays. So, how we apply that across these new fit outs or new buildings that are being put in place. And suddenly, yes, you look at a lower density, but what are the benefits that that's bringing, and how is that going to be used? Because there is still a large population that live in the CBD, that are going to be using these spaces. And, the majority of companies, are going to still maintain a city centre location. So really it's about pivoting, as you say, and looking at the opportunity that this presents and how companies or landlords or different developers can use that to their advantage moving forward.
So, what other opportunities does COVID bring a business like yours in this environment? You know, we're all obviously trying to get through this period now, but longer term, what are the opportunities that are presented to you?
We've taken up some of those opportunities already. Jack mentioned the change of workplace and the dynamics there, and we've put policies together that will be just part of our business as usual operations going forward. You know, it's really proven to us we can work efficiently, flexibly. So with 40% of our staff being women as well, and a couple of mothers on maternity leave and returning, the ability to know that, you know, it doesn't really matter where they are at the end of the day, having that choice. Some of our staff would prefer to be in the office, and some would be, you know, happy to do it from home. So it's all about having the choice. And again, we've learned how that can be really well balanced as a team. There's other aspects as well, from taking the opportunity for business improvement, looking at those efficiencies, and the continual cycle of business improvement is something that we've been looking at. Jack mentioned the sharing of resources between the state. You know, that's something, the different backgrounds we have from a professional point of view, we've always sort of lent that expertise across the border where it was needed for a specific project. And I think that ability to contribute remotely has been proven more and more. So I think that improved opportunity of being able to deliver projects from different locations and really pool those resources will give better value to our clients. Actually, we can service them better by the time, you know, we're reaching and tapping into that knowledge at a national level.
Oh, fantastic. And Emily, you touched on diversity there. That's something that's sort of very important to you. 40% women, that's a pretty good ratio for this industry, isn't it?
Yeah, we're really proud of our diversity. And look, it has proven to be hugely valuable in its own right. It wasn't necessarily a target or something that we had as a business. It was something that was valued from, you know, Tim Hogg, our managing director, who founded the company 11 years ago. It's very much grown to now 60 staff full-time nationally, to be extremely diverse in background, not just professionally, as I mentioned, in training, culturally, having the opportunity to work overseas. And if you look at all of our clients, they're all different. Their needs are different. The projects are different. So if you have a fantastic, diverse pool of staff who have a different point of view, from whether it's be culturally or the way that they've worked under different companies, different organisations, different policies, different plans, different industries, it's proven just to be able to give us that flexibility to service our clients and their needs on a case-by-case basis. So
that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. And so talking about your team and sort of moving on to something slightly silly. I saw yesterday on LinkedIn, there was a lady who, I can't remember, she's like head of engagement or something for Telstra. And for the last 84 days, she's turned up on Zoom, 84 working days, she's turned up in Zoom meetings in different fancy dress, a different character every single day, as a way to keep her team engaged and interested. And it's become like, you know,
the wardrobe.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm questioning a woman who has 84 days worth of, you know, fancy dress, but, you know. How are you guys staying engaged with each other? Look, I mean, we're having a serious chat on Zoom. They all tend to be pretty serious, you know. How are you staying together as a team? What are you doing to sort of, you know, maintain not just that sort of, serious side of stuff, but that diversity of enjoyment and thought, and, you know, where are the water cooler conversations coming in, you know?
Yeah, so the connectivity side of things within our company, it was always a challenge with people being across, you know, multiple offices anyway. So what we actually introduced very early days with the COVID lockdown was a national catch up via Zoom, which essentially was designed to be led by a different office every time, and essentially talk through some key, sort of bits and pieces to do with the actual running of the business, but then was an opportunity for people to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, whether it be an interesting project, whether it be something that's completely, off the wall and silly, and something that they just wanted to chat through. For example, last week, managing director got a new dog, a new puppy. So that was, the sort of the first 5 minutes of the meeting was introduction to Uzi, his new border collie, which is, very, sort of the softer side of it. And that's one of the benefits of being part of North. We are essentially, we run the company like it's a family run business. It's very much, the people are the heart of our business, and staying that connectivity. And me as a people manager, I do the telephone check-ins and that sort of thing with people. But what's been really encouraging during this time has been the fact that I've had people who report into me phoning me just to check if I'm okay.
That's great.
And it's sort of it really is that sort of whole sort of feedback from not only from top down, but also those people. We've been having Friday drinks via Teams as well, or via Zoom. We're also sort of doing those regular sort of survey checks with our staff to, sort of get that temperature check of how people are feeling, and making sure that we are maintaining those sort of development plans and things like that to do with our staff, to make sure that we're staying connected, and again, to sort of use that term again, to pivot sort of onto things that are within our circle of influence, and sort of make sure that we're getting the most out of this sort of circumstance.
I've heard that the saxophone is a very good sort of way to encourage team bonding. Emily, have you heard that? I don't know.
Oh, really? Just because you accidentally saw it in the background before.
Oh, no, not at all. That's a coincidence.
Look, it's funny, actually. It's not the only instrument that's turned up on Zoom. We have a colleague who plays the double bass, or
We do.
Yeah, and so look, you're right. The insight into people's homes has been an element I think we've all appreciated. I mentioned and referenced the
I could hear it then. Yeah.
childcare centre next door, and they're inside now. But there's those aspects that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily know about our colleagues, their pets, the interaction with the children, or the homeschooling, and all of those things. So it's added a dimension, whilst it's taken away things like celebrating cakes and reconciliation week in the office and those things that we would do together. We're finding other ways to do it, online, and it's also added that extra dimension of insight to us as people.
Very good. Yeah. Very nice. Well, look, this is a short form podcast. So my final question is, what are you guys excited about at the moment? What are you looking forward to post-COVID? Jack?
The Victorian market's really exciting, and there's lots of really, really interesting projects coming down the track, whether it be the North East Link project, whether it be, Newfoot's Grey Hospital, Frankston Hospital. There's still, lots of opportunities there. And fortunately, we're involved in most of those in some way or shape or form. So that's great for us. Our big push as North is our New South Wales office, and we are really, really investing heavily there. And our team have just secured a big role for North. Actually, our largest role, which is on Snowy 2.0.
Oh, great!
Which is a fantastic feather in the cap of our director in charge there, James Durney, and it's a really, really good opportunity, and it just shows that we are we've got a thriving business up there in New South Wales. There's opportunity there, and we just need to we will capitalise on that in the future. Em?
Yeah, similar to what Jack says, despite the challenges, we're seeing growth. South Australia, new projects in WA, Northern Territory, Tasmania. We're still maintaining, our position, and some fantastic, and I guess, gaining some of those big projects. What excites me mostly is, I mentioned before, that potential of the industry to always, look for ways to improve and do things better. And yeah, that excites me because I'm starting to see some of that really translate in projects. And I think there's more lessons for us in the industry in that respect. So looking forward to seeing those and making those a part of the way we do business going forward.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, I'm obviously talking to a lot of people, and thankful, I've got this platform to be able to do that. And you probably saw I'd spoken to John Davis from the ACA, and there's I don't think I've ever heard the contracting industry sort of have such a clear message about how they wanted to change and what they want to do. Executing those plans is obviously the biggest challenge, as always. But whether it's technology or a change in priority, change in people's priorities,
The element of social procurement, buying local, there's never been, I think, a stronger validation of not only the importance of that, but the opportunity that brings from a resilience point of view, where there has been that disruption at international sort of supply chain. So aspects like that, which didn't have a push or didn't have a platform previously, it is exciting to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows, our borders might be closed for a few years yet. There's going to be an opportunity in the skills and talent place that we'll never sort of have a challenge like we have at the moment, in terms of, you've got a $50 billion pipeline down in Melbourne. There's a $50 billion pipeline in Queensland, $100 billion in New South Wales, and not forgetting the other states, but they don't have that same sort of money involved, and there are not enough people to deliver those projects. So
no, and look, if I can, I guess throw to one of the opportunities again, it's manufacturing has we've lost, and we're reducing in the car manufacturing, but those facilities and the skills really could be turned to that modular construction component. These aren't all new ideas. UK's been doing it, business as usual for 15, 20 years. And whilst we're getting there, there's an opportunity that this, again, could supercharge those aspects of the industry. So yeah,
it's going to happen from necessity rather than modernising. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it's been fantastic to talk to you both today. Thank you ever so much for spending the time to do that. It's very much appreciated. And who knows if we might get an opportunity to talk again in the future when, see if some of these prophecies have come through, ideas have come through or, we might all be patting ourselves on the back, or something completely wacky might have happened in the meantime. But, who knows at the moment. But thank you ever so much for coming on Integrated Infrastructure, and hopefully talk to you again soon.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Paddy.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Integrated Infrastructure is powered by North Search, specialists in executive and technical search across engineering, design, construction, property and energy markets in Australia. If you'd like to find out more about North Search or get involved with this podcast, you can click on the links in the show notes or email me directly at the address on the screen. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Integrated Infrastructure. Please tell your friends and colleagues if you did, and we hope to see you again soon.